Hello, everybody. So tonight, what we're going to be doing is we've got a couple of small topics. The big thing is going to be the schedule breakdown, but I do want to talk a little bit about the three prospects that I'm keeping my eye on the most over the course of this season. We'll talk a little bit about Derek Ryan, who just retired, and in addition to that, we will then go on to a relatively detailed breakdown of the Hurricanes' regular season schedule. So before we do that, let me make one quick settings adjustment here. All right, there we go. Got it fixed. All right, so we got a couple of comments from my good friend AB here already. B, what's the overall record for the first 10 games? I'll get into that. And he also asked, does Miller go on the PK this year? What minutes are you giving him per game, and who's his line mate? I'm saving that for another stream where I'm going to talk about all that stuff. I have a bunch of stuff coming up. Like, I'm trying to do 3 or 4 streams a week. I promise that will get covered. I will let you know. That will more than likely be on the stream where I'm going to talk about the defensive pairings and the multiple different combinations that they could be as a whole and a multitude of other things with that. So that question will get answered. It's just tonight. I don't really want to talk about that because I'm going to give a very, very, very detailed stream on how I think things will go with the Canes defense. So I'm not expecting to see many people in here. I know that football's on again and they're playing that game in San Paulo or wherever they are. I like football, but it's not something I bend over backwards to watch like I do hockey and in a lot of cases baseball and motorsports. But I am going to maybe torture myself on Sunday and watch the Panthers. I'm in the market now, so it's easy for me to watch them. So we'll see. I hope that they don't suck. Our good friend Reese thinks that they will make the playoffs this year, and he is very knowledgeable when it comes to football. As you guys know, my best friend Jeremy, he's a really, really big Panthers fan too. So, him and I might hop on here a little bit on Sunday and talk about it, schedule permitting and all that type of stuff. So we're going to go ahead and get into everything here. All righty. So first things first, the typical don't sue me slide because I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't make any of this data, all that type of stuff. But the first thing that we're going to talk about before I put this back up here, the first thing I'm going to talk about, and I'm not going to do this in long detail, but just to give you guys an idea, the 3 prospects I'm watching the most this year are going to be Charles Alexis Legault. I think that within the next 2 seasons, maybe even less, but more than likely 2, you will see him make the jump and be in the lineup full time. I would really love to see a pair with him and Nikishin potentially in the future because that would be a scary pair. Nikishin brings the offense. They both bring the physicality, and Legault would bring the shutdown side of the defense. So he's who I'm watching the most. Secondly would be Dominik Bedinka. I think that his development lines up with about the time that Gostisbehere's contract would expire. So I would like to see how his development's doing. So I'm going to be watching him closely. And third is going to be Ivan Ryabkin, since he signed his ELC and he could potentially make the jump to the American Hockey League this year. So I'm going to be keeping a closer eye on him than I already planned on. So those are the 3 prospects I'm going to be watching the most. If you guys want information on some other ones, I'll do my best to get to it. I'm a full-time student and I work. So I'm going to do as much as I can. I did as much preparation for the upcoming season as I could. And basically all I have to do is enter stuff in Damage Report and Landfall Hour and go straight into the show, schedule permitting and everything like that. So there will be a lot of content this season. Some of it will be a little bit shorter form, but I'm going to try to stream more frequently and improve the quality of the content on this channel. And you guys have been really, really great with the feedback. I really appreciate all the support that I've gotten and everything like that. And I'm going to try to really, really deliver for you guys this year. And again, I really appreciate it. So we're going to get into the schedule, or we're going to get into Derek Ryan. This guy is a remarkable, remarkable story. He played for the Hurricanes for a few seasons. I don't have his exact stats pulled up. I pulled it up long enough to see how many points he had because he actually had a decent amount. He had a very, very untraditional path to the National Hockey League. This guy went from the Western Hockey League, which is probably the least skilled of the 3 leagues in the Canadian Hockey League. It's very, very physical. It's a very tough league to play in. It's definitely more will over skill. It tends to produce more physical players, more grinders. They're still skilled players. If you get paid to play, you're good. If you play major juniors, you're good. But the Western Hockey League, as far as taking a toll on the body, is the one that can do it the most. After that, he went to play college hockey, but not in America, not NCAA. He played in Canada for the University of Alberta. He then went overseas and played in Austria in their highest level of professional hockey. He was then signed by the Canes. He played one season with the Checkers, and then he became a mainstay in the NHL with the Hurricanes. Now, the Canes were not very good back then, as we all know, but Derek Ryan was definitely a beacon in that. He was a good story and all that. And, you know, he was a solid bottom six center. He did all the little things well. He would block shots. He was good defensively, good in the circle. He was definitely a utilitarian player. But going down the path that he went, making it to the NHL from college hockey to Austria to the Swedish Hockey League, and then eventually making it into the American League. And additionally, as you may have saw in the thumbnail, if you're watching on YouTube, he at one point in time was the captain of the Charlotte Checkers. So he also had some leadership ability as well. I do remember a story regarding something along the lines of him playing in a game while he was in Austria the same day that he lost his mother. Very brave thing. Character guy, great hockey player, and he was definitely one of those examples of don't ever give up if you think you can do something. And he made it to the NHL. He managed to have a 606 game career between the Hurricanes, the Flames, and the Oilers that he just retired from. And he had 82 goals, 127 assists for a total of 209 points. And one funny story, apparently he had a nickname of DR, his initials, and eventually he started getting called the Doctor, and there would be times where he would score or he would make a really good play, and John Forsland would say, the Doctor is in. And I would just like to say, now that the Doctor is out, I wish him a very, very happy retirement. This guy's a really good story, and he was one of those guys that really scratched and clawed and fought to have a career in the NHL. Not all too dissimilar from Jalen Chatfield in a lot of ways. So congratulations to him, and I wish him all the best. So now that we've got that out of the way, we're going to start talking about the schedule. Let me see. We got a couple more comments here first. BTS says, yellow. Would you rather see Slavin and Miller or Slavin and Walker? I like Slavin and Walker. I'm going to talk about that when I do the defense projection stream in sometime in the coming days. All that will get answered. So, but that's going to be some time from now, and I'll clip all that too and post it retroactively in case anybody can't watch it live and all that type of stuff. I have plans for that I'm going to go into real detail about that. I'm going to spend at least an hour, potentially an hour and a half talking about the defense, and that's not even accounting for comments and questions and everything like that. So we are witnessing the end of an era. The NHL recently announced that the plan is for next season, they will go to an 84-game season, a shorter preseason, which I'm happy they're doing a shorter preseason. I personally would have liked the regular season to be shorter. Everybody knows my thoughts on that as to why. And the Stanley Cup would be awarded in June, and the NHL season would start sooner. That is one good thing that comes of it. That opens up some room to have more events like the upcoming World Cup of Hockey, and maybe you can continue to replace the All-Star game with some sort of international game of some sort. Still give the players a break, but the All-Star game had gone stale. It needed to be done. I'm glad it's over. I'm hoping it's over. I personally could care less if they ever have another All-Star game. I would rather them do something along the lines of like a North American versus World All-Stars, old school type of 7-game series or something. There's so many different things they could do with having so many players from so many different countries to fill the void of when the All-Star game was and still have a bunch of really cool best on best exhibition type of events. So I'm going to let you guys know ahead of time. This schedule, I've looked at it a lot. I broke all of it down. I double checked my numbers and everything like that. This is going to be rough as far as looking at a schedule. It's going to be very arduous. You have 9 total road trips, 1 of 6 games, 3 of 4 games, 1 of 3 games, and 4 of 2 games. Total homestands, you have 4, 1 of 7 games, 1 of 4 games, 4 of 3 games, and 3 of 2 games. There are 14 back-to-backs in the schedule, which is not much better than last season. Last season, there were supposed to be 16. There was the game that was supposed to take place in Tampa right after the season started. I believe it would have been the Hurricanes' second game of the season. It was going to be the home opener and then them fly to Tampa immediately the next day. Of course, that was delayed because of the hurricane, and it ended up being 15 back-to-backs. The Hurricanes still have 14 this year. 2 of those are both at home. 8 of those are where both games are on the road. And 4 of those are split between home and away games. With the Metropolitan Division, you're playing everybody 4 times except for the Capitals. You play them 3 times, and you play the Islanders 3 times. Other splits for a total of 56 games. As tradition dictates with an 82-game season, there will be 24 games against the Atlantic Division and 32 against Western Conference teams, one home, one away. All right, so getting into October, this is one of the more tame parts of the schedule, but you notice there's not a ton of home games because of the State Fair road trip. Now, the thing with the State Fair road trip used to be really, really dreaded back when the team wasn't that good. Now it's kind of a blessing in disguise. So that first game up there on the 4th, don't worry about that. That's a preseason game. Opening night will be against the Devils, 7:30 p.m. On the 9th of October. That right off the bat, you got 2 division matchups. You'll play the Flyers again on the 11th, and then you go on the State Fair road trip where you'll play the Sharks, then the Ducks and the Kings every other day for that week. And then the first 2-day break in that entire road trip is after playing Vegas on the 20th. On the 23rd, you play the Avalanche, go down to Dallas on the 25th. Hope we whip the shit out of them. Fuck you, Mikko Rantanen. And then they'll return home to play Vegas again and wrap up that season series early. And then on the 30th, they'll close out the month playing against the Islanders. So I did get one question in here from AB where he says, what do you think the overall record's going to be for the first 10 games? This is a tougher schedule than it looks. New Jersey is going to be a challenge. Philadelphia, even though they're kind of in between rebuild and transition type of mode and everything like that, that could, excuse me one second. Even though, they're still good enough to be a problem. San Jose, that's a trap game. Anaheim, that's a little bit of a trap game probably as well. The Kings, they're still solid enough to where they could finish 3rd in their division or take the first wild card spot. Vegas, always a difficult team to play against. Colorado's really good, and this time they'll be healthy when the Canes play them. Dallas, good team. Vegas, again, good team. The Islanders are kind of a team that I don't think is going to be that great, but I think that they'll still be enough to be a problem for the Canes. So out of that, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games right there. Or let's see, 2, 3, that's 5. So in the first 10 games, because the first 10 games are all in October, if the Canes come out at, say, a .550 win percentage, I'll be fine with it. There's going to be some bumps in the road with all the turnover. So if they come out of this month 6-4, good. If they come out 7-3, great. So that's what I imagine it'll be like, either 6-4 or 7-3. It'll be really indicative when we see what the team looks like coming out of training camp and what the line combinations are going to be, what the defensive pairs are going to be. Starting goalie is probably going to be Freddie. So that's another thing to consider in regards to how things are going to go when things start. I'm expecting a bumpy start just so that all the new guys can acclimate. When I do the projection stream and the ones where I talk about the forward lines and defensive pairs, I'll go into more detail about that. But as of right now, if I had to take a guess, I'd say they come out of October 6-4, AB. So then you go on to November. You have a total of 15 games, 8 home, 7 away. You'll play Boston on the 1st in Boston, then short trip over to New York to play against the Rangers. Then you play Minnesota, Buffalo at home, jump on a plane, go to Toronto, then come back to Carolina for a 3-game homestand that opens up with Washington. Then on the weekend, you have your first back-to-back between the Canucks and the Oilers, so you don't have to go anywhere, but that's still going to be 2 rough games back-to-back. The Bruins, again, you'll play them for the second time that season on the 17th of November. Then you go to Minnesota, wrap up that season series with another Western Conference team on the 19th. Then you go to Winnipeg on the 21st, Buffalo on the 23rd, get a 2-day break en route back to PNC to play, or excuse me, Lenovo to play against the Rangers. You'll play the Jets on the 26th, which is a Friday, get that Saturday off, and then play the Calgary Flames on the 30th. This is around the time I think that we'll start getting a better idea of what the Hurricanes are going to be like this season, how well everyone's acclimating and everything like that. It's going to take about 20 games, I think, before they're really, really going. Now, the key to that with them getting going in that 20 games, when we get to the end of the schedule, you're going to see that there's not a whole lot of games at home, and the last 5 to 6 weeks of it is going to be really, really rough because there's a lot of time on the road and there's a lot of splits where you're at home for a little bit and then they're on the road again. So coming into December, you have 14 games, 8 home, 6 away. This is a good time to make some hay. As you saw in the previous one, this is where you have that long homestand of 7 games starting. It starts with the Rangers on the 26th of November, and then you come back over here, and then you have 4 more games going into December at home. Maple Leafs, day off. Predators, another back-to-back where they'll play against the Sharks right after that on Sunday. 8th, you have off, and then on the 9th, you hit up the Blue Jackets are in town, and then the Canes are on the road again for the next 2, having another every other day. I saw that comment. I'll get to you, buddy. I promise. Then you'll have another every other day set where the first time they go to Washington, I'm actually going to try to go to that game because it's pretty easy to fly to it from here. And as you guys know, I just recently moved from that area. Play Philadelphia on the 13th, so that's a pretty short trip as well. And that will be the first split back-to-back where Carolina will play in Philadelphia on the 13th and then be back at home to play against Philadelphia again on the 14th. Couple of days off, play against the Nashville Predators again, and then you have another back-to-back on the road in Florida. Short trip, but 2 good teams. We know how good the Panthers are in particular. I hope the ones I watch on Sunday are that good. I'm not getting my hopes up. On the 23rd, they'll be playing Florida again at home. 3 days off. It's going to be a much-needed break at that point. Then the Red Wings on the 27th, and then you have a split back-to-back where you play the Rangers at home on the 29th, and then you head up to Pittsburgh to play against the Penguins on the 30th. This is another month I think the Canes can really make some hay between. One, you have the long homestand. You have a lot of weaker teams in here. I don't think that Nashville is going to be very good this season. I really don't. That being said, they weren't good last season, and they still won both games against the Canes, so that can happen. But as far as most of the schedule goes, out of these 14 games, 8 or 9 of them I think are very, very, very winnable, maybe even 10. I hope that they'll come out of this month 9-5. Not accounting for games that go to overtime that they would lose, but I would say if they could come out of this month 9-5, that would be solid. So going into January, you got a lot of home games in January, and this is another place where you have to, as Justin Williams says, make hay. On Thursday, the 1st of January, they will be playing against the Montreal Canadiens. That seems like it happens a lot where the Canes have a New Year's Eve or a New Year's Day game, and it seems like it's always against the Canadiens. I remember the last game I went to before the virus that totally didn't come from a lab in China was a New Year's Eve game against the Hurricanes and the Canadiens. On the 3rd, you play against Colorado, wrap up that season series. Again, always a good team. You'll have another game with the Devils immediately the day after. On the 6th, you play against Dallas. That's going to be a raucous house that night. Like Eric Hollis said it best, this fan base is not pleasant. And when they get united in their hatred of somebody, the whole world knows about it. So I'm going to try to be at that game as well. That one I'm expecting to be pretty rowdy. Go to the 8th, you play against Anaheim. Then you have Seattle on the 10th. So decently easy enough schedule there. You just have one back-to-back on the road. Other than that, it's an every other game split. Get a travel day. Go up to Detroit, then go to St. Louis, not too far apart. But out of those 2 games, I think that they can take 4 points. Then you have a weekend where you play against the Panthers on the 16th, and then right back to New Jersey for another back-to-back. Play Buffalo on the 19th, 2 days off, play Chicago, go on the road to play Ottawa. And then that's around the time, that'll be the last game going into the Christmas break. Utah Mammoth on the 29th, and then another day off, and then wrapping up January playing against the Washington Capitals in their barn on the 31st, and that will be the second of 3 games between them before wrapping it up later. February, there's, of course, the 2-week break in there for the Olympics. We know for a fact that 2 Hurricanes players are going to be there. That's going to be Aho and Slavin. Jarvis, I think, could still make Team Canada. And don't sleep on Stankoven. If Russia also is allowed to play in the Olympics, if that changes for any reason, Svechnikov, I definitely think would make that team, and he would be there. Nikishin also would be on that team more than likely. So that's other things to keep an eye on. So Sunday the 1st, you play against the Kings, and then on the 3rd, you'll play against Ottawa, go up to New York, play the Rangers on the 5th, and then the Olympic break starts right after that. Then you get back from the break, and you'll play Tampa on the 26th and Detroit on the 27th. Both of those games are at home. So that'll be a good time for the Canes to come off that break and get right back into it. They'll be at home. That'd be a good time for them to go in there, beat both those teams, and get 4 points. It's going to be difficult to do that, especially against Tampa. Detroit might be a little bit better this season. I still don't think that they're going to make the playoffs. I think that they'll barely miss, if I had to guess. Then you go into March, and this is where the schedule gets really, really saturated, and there's a whole lot of travel involved. On the 2nd, they play against the Kraken and then they play against the Canucks on the 4th. And then a day after that, they play against Edmonton, and then Calgary immediately the next day. So there's not a whole lot of travel time in between those 4 cities, but that is a lot of hockey in 6 days. And one of those teams is really good, and that's the Oilers. And the other 3 can, at a minimum, be problematic. They'll get a couple of days off, come back home, play against the Penguins, then the St. Louis Blues, and then they're back on the road again to play Tampa. 2 days off, play Columbus, and then that's another back-to-back that's split between a home and away game, or an away and a home game, where they'll then go to Pittsburgh, come and then fly immediately from there to Toronto, back to Pittsburgh, and then to Montreal on the 24th. They'll have 3 days off in March before playing the Devils, and then turning around and playing the Canadiens the same day on a home back-to-back. And then they wrap up that month by playing against the Blue Jackets, another team I think that will be close to making the playoffs. They could not. I could see them maybe making wild card 1, but probably no higher than wild card 2, depending on primarily what the Sabres, the Red Wings, and the Canadiens do. Excuse me. Yeah, I'll say the Sabres. I think that maybe they can turn it around this year. I don't want them to, because you guys know I hate Buffalo. So there's also that to keep in mind. Now, as far as the team potentially getting improved, this is the month where you want to watch and see who potentially falls out of contention, as far as teams where that the Canes could maybe make a deal with and bring another player in, bring another scoring winger in, bring a second line center in. There's a bunch of options there. Potentially that's around the time frame that you're going to want to look at that. So you have 15 games there, 6 home, 9 away. So this is where the schedule starts to get really, really difficult for the Hurricanes in terms of travel. And it doesn't matter which team you're playing against, whether it's considered a good team, a bad team, a playoff team, a non-playoff team, a divisional team, or a wild card team. The schedule is hectic enough alone to create a problem there. So, excuse me, if the Canes can come out of this month 8-7, solid. I would prefer them come out, say, 9-6. If they come out of this month 9-6, it was a successful month, if you ask me. So basically, when it comes to every schedule this month, and I'll say this as I go into April, when it comes to every month, when you look at it in isolation, if they come out 2 games ahead, if they win 2 more games than they lose over the course of this, whether that's in regulation or overtime, they'll be fine. But it's going to be challenging. So when they do come home to start April, they go into their last homestand of the season. On the 2nd, they will play against the Blue Jackets again, close out that season series. Then they'll play against the Islanders on the 4th, close out that season series. And that's it. That's the last homestand of the season. They'll play against Ottawa on the 5th, another back-to-back that's split between home and away, so not as arduous as some of the other ones, but still pretty bad, especially for that point in the season. On the 7th, they'll play against the Bruins and close out that season series. That will also be the last home game. And then the Blackhawks on the 9th, the Mammoth on the 11th, the Flyers on the 13th, and excuse me, I misspoke. They will close out the season series with the Islanders on the 14th of April, and that will be the end of the regular season. So that last 4 games right there, those are all teams Carolina should beat. But at that point in the season, you're looking at Utah, a team that could be fighting for a playoff spot, the Flyers, who have a really outside chance of being fighting for a playoff spot, and also the Islanders. The Blackhawks will be eliminated by, realistically, mathematically speaking, early March, late February, somewhere around then, more than likely. Now, I would like to go back and look at one other thing here. The hallmark of a team typically making the playoffs, as you know, for our Canadian and foreign friends, is American Thanksgiving. Teams that are typically above the cut line make the playoffs 80% of the time. And inversely, teams that are below it miss it 80% of the time. So if the Canes are in a good spot on November 28th, then I think that they'll make the playoffs just fine. I'm not worried about them missing the playoffs. I'm not going to be worried about that for a long time, sans injuries and other unforeseen circumstances like that. You don't really have to worry about that with this team, where their challenges really lies in the playoffs, but you can't look that far ahead. You still have to go through the regular season and get to that point to have the problem to worry about. So this is the month I'm going to be watching closely. More than anything is going to be November, and subsequently December as well. So if they're in a good spot after that, great. When you get into January, you got a ton of home games, and then you got a little bit of travel in there, or you got a decent amount of travel in there, and you've only got 2 back-to-backs, one of them, and both of them are splits. And then you have one more split from December going into, or from January going into February, which is an away, then a home. And then after that, they've just got 2 more games and then get to the break. And most of the guys can get rested up, mentally reset, work on anything that they have to work on as far as nursing any injuries or anything like that. And then in March, that's where the schedule gets really, really rough. Like I said, if they come out of this 9-6, they had an outstanding run. If they have mathematically secured a playoff berth by the end of this month, all the better. I think it'll be a little bit before that, honestly. But the most important thing here is don't go into this month with any questions, because by then the fatigue factor is going to set in, attrition is going to set in, and you've only got 3 games at home, and the last leg of the season is a 4-game road trip with a bunch of trap games. This should not be a factor by then. If it is, then at that point, we might have something to worry about. But as it stands right now, I personally do not foresee that being a problem. So all in all, to put everything together, have a good start. You're going to need one this season. Go grab the State Fair road trip by the horns and make some hay during that 7-game homestand. Make good of those 4-game homestands, everything like that. So revisiting that a little bit here. State Fair road trip. 6 games. Like I said, this used to be the bane of this team's existence. Nowadays, the State Fair road trip, which is the 6-game road trip, if you go out there and you have a good showing, if you win 4 of those games, 5 of those games, or maybe even all of them, you've gotten ahead of the season pretty quickly, because you've already made some hay and gotten 6 of your 41 home games out of the way. And then before November is over, you've got 2 more. So you're getting over 10% of your road games out of the way before before the end of the second week in November. So the schedule is not all too dissimilar from what we've seen in the past with the Canes. It's very similar to last year because you had that time off for the Olympic break, and something I will do in the future is talk about what my projections are for the Olympics. I personally believe that Team USA, if they make the right roster decisions, will find themselves in another 1-goal difference matchup with Team Canada, whether they win it or not. Different discussion entirely. But I think that they can do it as long as they don't make boneheaded decisions like leaving Tage Thompson off the roster in favor of Jack frickin' Hughes, who was awful. So I will now get to some of the comments. Dylan, what's up, buddy? I enjoyed the All-Star Skills competition. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'd rather have more things like the 4 Nations face-off. I think that would be a lot more fun, because the All-Star game had went stale to me years ago. I didn't really like the All-Star game that much to begin with. Even when I was a kid, I didn't really like it that much. I was kind of like, what's the point of this? Zen Alford, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but welcome to the show. I know nothing about NHL, probably because I live in England, but I've stumbled on this live stream. You guys got some good hockey over there, though, in the, I forget what they call it there, the league in England, the professional one there. I know it's not just called the English Hockey League. It's got some sort of name, EIHL or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. BTS, what's up, dude? I think we end the season around 105 points. Distinctly possible. I would say more like 101, because this is going to be one of the hardest schedules the Hurricanes have had in years. Last year was pretty rough, and that's why they didn't have such a great road record in addition to the roster turnover. But this year is going to be worse. So those new guys that they brought in, the ones that they gave contract extensions to that they already had, i.e. Blake and Stankoven, the new guys they brought in like Miller and Ehlers, they're really going to have to pull their weight to get that done. Zen Alford says, I'm so confused. I live confused. Don't feel bad. And he also says, bro, you look like Braun Strowman or some power lifter. Oh, thank you. I just started lifting again, and I play hockey too. And I had to take a couple of years off. I got really overweight. I was 270 pounds last April, and as of the last time I weighed, I was down to 232. I probably put a little bit of muscle back on, but yeah, I am very happy that I'm lifting weights again. I feel a whole lot better. Dylan Bollinger also says I'll be February 28th Red Wings game. Yeah, I want to try and make a few of them. Zen Alfer said, what is going on? You look like Eddie Hall if he had a younger brother. Megan Schuin says, I'll be at the Pens on December 30th, the Capitals on January 31st, and the Flyers on April 13th. So pretty excited. Yeah, I live closer now since I live in South Carolina. So it only takes me about 3.5 hours to get to Raleigh if I leave at the right time, avoid the traffic, and don't stop, which I'm close enough to where if I have a full tank of gas and bring myself something to eat and something to drink, I get there in 3.5 hours easily. I've got somewhere to stay up there with the aforementioned AB. So I just go crash with him. Megan also says, what game or winner about do you think the Canes might clinch a playoff spot? Mid-March at the earliest. If it takes much longer than that, then we've probably got something to worry about because the schedule is going to be hard. These guys are really going to earn their playoff spot this year. So, I mean, they earned it last year. They had a off season that many on the outside who know absolutely nothing about this team or the sport as a whole said was the end of the franchise. I can't count the number of people I knew, especially like, some of my friends who are Caps fans. Cause like I said, I used to live up by Washington. They sent me texts. They're like, dude, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, like anybody who was around that time frame, as far as like watching the channel and everything, knows that I was like initially kind of pissed off. They let Brady Shea go, but then they brought Gostisbehere back and brought Walker in. I was like, I'm not worried about Shea anymore. And ultimately, they built the foundation for an even better team than the one that they had previously. And I think that we're really going to start seeing that over the course of this year. But I'm expecting mid-March timeframe, they'll mathematically lock up a playoff spot. As far as them winning the division, that I think is going to be a little bit hard also because of the schedule. The Devils will be healthy at least for a decent chunk of the season. So we'll see how that goes. Max, what's up, buddy? Nice work, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. BTS says, I'm listening while practicing. Got to work off dinner. Yeah, that's what I did earlier. After I got done with stuff in class, I went and I did a lot of military press and I did a lot of shrugs. I did some rows and everything because I did back and shoulders today, but like I did 100 sets of military press. I didn't have a ton of weight on it because I'm at that point in life where I'd rather build muscle endurance than size. And I've been really big muscularly before, and I actually didn't feel good around that time. I felt tired all the time. And I think because I put too much muscle on, I'd try to go skate, and I was so top heavy, it wasn't working, even with me working my legs out. So Max also says, no idea if you talked about this already, but what's your thoughts on the new away jerseys? So I actually have expressed a lot of stuff on that if you follow me over on X, and the last stream I did was actually live during the reveal. I am very underwhelmed with them. I think that the short version is it's like they took the car decal of the Strut and Stormy and threw it on the right shoulder, and it looks totally out of place with the rest of the sweater. It does not make any sense at all. It's like a canvas painting with a car decal on it. And I think the other mistake that they really made with those was the stripes at the bottom. I know they were trying to emulate the Stadium Series sweater, and in that regard, they succeeded. But I think that around the bottom of the sweater, if they'd left the stripes off, it would have looked better. It would have contrasted better with the pants. And I think that they should have done something different for the shoulders. And if they'd left them blank, I wouldn't have been upset about that either. I mean, I like simple templates. Like if you've ever seen the sweater I made for my hockey team, the Tomcats, my beer league team, it's about as simple as it comes. USN roundels on the shoulders, the F14, and three stripes, of which 2 are the same color. So I value simplicity. Now, maybe they'll grow on me over the course of time because the white sweater that just got phased out, I didn't like it when I first saw it. And then when I saw it with everything else, when I saw how well it went with the gloves, how it went with the pants, and the socks looked good with it, and then when they added the red buckets, I was like, okay, that's fire. That I really liked, and it grew on me over the course of time. I will get one of these sweaters eventually because I collect them all. I even have the candy cane, and I have the away one that had the black stripes on it that was worn during the drought and during the 18-19 season. I have that one. I've never worn it. The tags are still on it. Same thing for the candy cane one. So I will get one just because I collect these things. But overall, I'm not very impressed with it. I don't think they did anything particularly revolutionary with it. They basically just inverted the Stadium Series sweater, changed something on the shoulder, and called it a day. I don't want to say lazy, but it was unimaginative, I would say. I think that they could have used that template and done something significantly cleaner, significantly better. That's just my personal thoughts on it. I know a lot of people bought them immediately. They were sold out pretty quick from what I was told as far as what was available online right after they were revealed. So if it were up to me, that sweater would have been about the same, but it was at that point where it could have been great. It could have been simple. It could have been a very imaginative reinvention of the Stadium Series sweater. And they did too much to it in one way with adding the Stormy decal on the right shoulder, and then did too much to it on the bottom, having those stripes, that the gradient stripe and the red stripe, they just look kind of out of place on white as opposed to black like it was with the original Stadium Series sweater. So that's my thoughts on that. I'm going to eventually do a stream where I look at the pictures in detail and kind of break it down, or that might be a pre-recorded video. I don't know yet. So we'll see, but I just didn't see the point in it more than anything. If they should have updated anything, it should have been the current home reds. Like, for example, when Eric Stahl's number was retired, they put the old school font, the same one that you see on the 25th anniversary sweater, on the ones that they wore for warmups, which are the Hurricanes' current red sweater with the old school font. The font can make or break a sweater. And one of the things I was talking about on the stream the other day is that a font on a sweater is kind of like the soundtrack for a movie. A movie can be kind of but if Hans Zimmer is the composer, it might be a lot more enjoyable to watch. So that was one thing. I thought that if they should have made a change to any of them, it should have been that one first, because it's been around the longest out of the three that were previously used. And it's basically just an improvement of the candy cane sweater. They added the black stripes to the bottom of the sleeves and the warning flags in between the white stripes, and that was that. So that's the one I think if they were going to change any of them, they should have changed that one. At least they should have went back to the old school font on that. It would have looked a lot better. So overall, I'm just kind of, it was one of those things I'm kind of like, I don't understand, out of all the things that they could have spent the offseason doing, they did that. That just didn't make any sense to me. Snowman, what's up, buddy? How early in the season do you think the Canes are able to get a trade done for a 2C? I'm thinking around Thanksgiving. No, I don't think it'll happen that early. I think it'll be when teams start falling out of contention, and when they're really out of contention. I'm expecting no sooner than January. And that likelihood grows in February and March as you get closer to the trade deadline. Now, it could happen when you're saying it could happen. I just personally don't see it going down that way. If it does happen in January, that's not unprecedented. As we know, Don Waddell's first season, he traded Nino Niederreiter, or he got Nino Niederreiter in exchange for Victor Rask, and what was a multi-piece trade at first, and eventually it became a one-for-one trade that worked out really well for Carolina. And I hate that Victor Rask didn't work out, because I really liked him. I thought he had a lot of good going to his game. And I think the biggest thing that held him back, like, he was a big dude. He's very stable on his skates. And when at times he would play with a physical edge. He would play with that. He would play a hateful game, if you will. When that went away, the rest of Rask's game went with him. So that was my one thing about that. Dylan Bollinger says, don't rush it. Wait until someone worth trading for comes available. Yeah, that's the biggest reason why I don't think that we'll see anything until it gets closer to the deadline. And he also says, I want a new red jersey. I will say I do love the font on the new ones. Yeah, the font's cool. And I do like how they did the black numbers on the sleeves to contrast with the red, and then the red numbers on the back to contrast with the white. All that looks fine. If you take the Stormy patch off and take the stripes off around the bottom and come up with something different to put on the right shoulder, like, they had the Stadium Series emblem on the actual Stadium Series sweater. I think with that's where you can put, like, maybe the Raleigh City of the Oaks logo on the right shoulder or something there, or maybe the regular double warning flag could have gone there. There were a bunch of different things they could have done, and I think that they took the least effective route when choosing what they were going to put on that sweater. Dylan Bollinger says, in an interview, these jerseys were made before last season, just had to go through all the approval process. Yeah, I saw that on Adam Gold. I just feel like that they could have done better with it. They really could have. And then they're committed to wearing these for the next 3 years. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see new ones roll out of the home red and the alternate black here in the coming seasons. And as I've stated in the past, for the 30th anniversary, what I'm expecting to see is they'll roll out the same one you saw for the 25th in red. They'll roll out the away version of that with white, and the old school black alternate, the original alternate sweater, which was my favorite one out of all of them. All right, guys. So that's all I've got for tonight as far as breaking the schedule down and everything. I plan on doing something over the weekend. I'm not entirely sure what. I've got a bunch of different things written down here that I got to put slides together for and everything like that. And as soon as I know exactly what I'm doing, of course, I'll post it on X and everything like that. If you don't follow me over there, follow there. If you're new here on YouTube, please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Also, turn on the notifications, even though they've not been working very well. And another thing, if you're new here, I try to do a pregame show and a postgame show. There's Landfall Hour, which is my pregame show, and Damage Report, which is my postgame show. I try to do those before and after every single game, except for the ones I go to. But even then, I'm going to try to do it for those as well. They just may be a little bit delayed because normally it's right before and right after the game, typically an hour before puck drop is when I start Landfall Hour, or an hour and a half. And then Damage Report is usually immediately preceding the game. If not, I try and do it the next evening. So I got one more comment here, and then I'm going to get out of here. BTS says, do you think Stank should stay on the third line? No. I'd rather him be there than Jarvis. I'm kind of sick of the Martinook Staal Jarvis line. I've had enough of that personally. And I think that kind of hampers some of the Canes' other best players, particularly Aho, to not have Jarvis with him. Basically, Martinook and Staal should have Carrier, Stankoven, Robinson. Like, there's a long list of guys who should be down there with them before Jarvis, before Svechnikov. But Stankoven, I think, could break into a top 6 role this season. I personally would like to see Jackson Blake with Staal and Martinook. I know I've been saying that for well over a year now, but that's what I would do if it were up to me. And that's not me hating on Rod. I think Rod's a great coach. This team wouldn't be where it is without him. And people have mistaken some of the things that I've said for dislike of Rod, which is 110% false. I have proven that fault on a multitude of different occasions. But he's a human being. He makes mistakes. There's times where he makes really bad mistakes, i.e. putting Scott Morrow in a second time, which eventually I'm going to sit down and do a stream where I talk about the multitude of reasons why I'm glad Scott Morrow got traded. And as you guys saw, I kind of saw it coming when it came to Scott Morrow getting traded after the way he performed in the playoffs. And the Canes tend to not hold on to players like that longer than 3 seasons. Because if you go back and look, DeAngelo, 1 season, and then the partial one where they brought him back. Dougie Hamilton, same thing. Jake Bean. You could maybe throw Ethan Bear, and to some degree, even though he was better defensively than all of the aforementioned, you could throw Burns in there as well. So there's a whole bunch of different things there as far as all that goes. But I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. I'm going to walk my dog, and I'm going to get me a Gatorade, and I'm going to go to sleep. I have to work tomorrow. Guys, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Again, follow over on X and subscribe over here and turn the notifications on. I'm going to be streaming a whole lot as the season comes up. I'm going to do watch parties for some of the preseason games, if not all of them, and the prospects tournament as well. So, and like I said in the beginning of the show, the 3 prospects I'm keeping keeping my eye on the most are going to be Charles Alexis Legault, Dominic Badinka, and the newly drafted and newly ELC'd Ivan Ryabkin. Y'all have a good night. I will see you next time.